All right, council member, we are now live on YouTube. You may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert White, council member at large and chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Today is Friday, March 25th, 2022. The time is 12:08 p.m. and I'm calling to order this budget oversight hearing of the committee. Today's hearing is regarding the Office of the Inspector General, the Office of Risk Management, and the Office of Administrative Hearings. Our first agency today will be the Office of the Inspector General. The mission of the Office of the Inspector General, or OIG, is to independently audit, inspect, and investigate matters pertaining to the District of Columbia government in order to prevent and detect corruption, mismanagement, waste, fraud, and abuse, promote economy, efficiency, effectiveness, and accountability, inform stakeholders about issues relating to district programs and operations, and recommend and track the implementation of corrective actions. The OIG's work is incredibly important to the council, and we must regularly rely on its reports to shed light on government operations and identify areas for improvement. As it pursues its investigations and audits, the OIG is granted broad statutory authority to access government data and documents and to interview government employees. Unfortunately, that authority has been challenged or impeded at times by this administration. This committee takes very seriously any attempt to delay or deny the work of the Inspector General, and we should be concerned about any efforts to reduce transparency in our agency operations. To support the work of the Inspector General, this committee identified funding to allow the Inspector General to hire 2 new positions, including an investigator and a staff assistant, and enhanced funding for procurement risk assessment by $200,000. The mayor's proposed fiscal year 2023 budget for the Inspector General reflects an increase of $2,291,229 and 11 full-time employees over last year's approved budget. While there were a number of shifts related to federal funding for pandemic oversight, it appears that the bulk of the increase is in agency management, for information technology, and customer service. I look forward to hearing from the Inspector General today to understand what this proposed budget means for the office and how they intend to use the anticipated new investments. Our second agency today is the Office of Risk Management. ORM was created in 2003. It provides risk management direction, guidance, and support through 4 divisions: the Workers' Compensation Division, the Risk Prevention and Safety Division, the Insurance Division, and the Tort Liability Claims Division. It is important to note that this committee shares jurisdiction over various aspects of ORM operations with the Committee on Business and Economic Development and the Committee on Labor and Workforce Development. My committee only oversees ORM's central budget. ORM's budget consists of 5 programmatic components: agency management, risk prevention and safety, insurance, public sector workers' compensation, and tort liability. My questions will focus on these 5 components. The mayor's fiscal year 2023 budget proposes reducing ORM's budget from $4,104,112 to $4,100,410 and eliminates 1 FTE. This shift also reflects the shift of 5 full-time employees from continuing full-time to term employees and a small overall shift in non-personnel services funding. Since last year, the committee has received concerns and criticisms about the public sector's workers' compensation program run by ORM, including lack of an adequate selection of healthcare providers, delayed claims processing, poor customer service, and burdensome bureaucratic requirements. We covered many of those concerns in our performance oversight hearing, and I may touch on them again today, as well as the office's priorities for the next fiscal year. The last agency on today's agenda is the Office of Administrative Hearings. The mission of the Office of Administrative Hearings, or OAH, is to provide DC residents and government agencies with a fair, efficient, and effective forum to manage and resolve administrative disputes. Today, OAH hears contested cases from more than 40 agencies, boards, and commissions. During the performance oversight hearing for the office, we focus a lot of attention on the office's need to address its case backlogs, improve transparency in its operations, and ensure accessibility for residents not represented by counsel. I know the Chief Judge shares these goals, and we will be talking today about whether the mayor's proposed budget sets us up to be successful in meeting those goals. In the budget book, the proposed budget for OAH looks like a decrease of $2,591,598 and 20 full-time employees, which would not be ideal. However, those top line numbers reflect that OAH does much of its work on behalf of other agencies, and the funding for that work is shifted in its presentation in the budget. Accounting for that shift, the proposed budget for OAH has actually increased by $549,013 from last year's proposal. This increase appears to be largely to support increases in contract costs, partially funded with additional federal Medicaid funding and a small enhancement to support travel expenses. Taken together, the proposed budget does not appear to reflect a substantial shift in agency operations. Now, of course, I will dig more into these changes with the Chief Judge later today. As we prepare to bring up our panel of public witnesses, I'll note that everyone should have received a copy of the witness list yesterday. I'm going to call witnesses in the order that they appear on that list. When I call your name as a witness, you will drop out of the hearing momentarily. You will come back in as a panelist, and at that time, you will be able to unmute yourself to testify. Public witnesses have 4 minutes to testify. Advisory neighborhood commissioners receive 5 minutes to testify. And we will now turn to our public witnesses. Alexis Christensen, Daniel Burrs, Fritz Mulhauser, and Michael Syndrome.
Hello?
We can hear you. We're gonna get our panel lined up, and we will be with you in a minute, Mr. Syndrome.
Thank you.
I'm not sure why I'm not seeing the other witnesses. Alexis Christensen, are you with us?
I'm here.
There we are. Wonderful. Welcome. You can begin when you're ready.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the committee. My name is Alexis Christensen. I'm a Skadden Fellow at the Legal Aid Society of DC. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. I want to first commend the district and OAH in its efforts to meet the needs of district residents as we continue to emerge from the pandemic. Today, my testimony will focus on 3 areas related to a litigant's access to justice at OAH that implicate OAH's budget process. So first, we want to recommend that the committee confirm that the WebEx remote hearing technology is fully funded in this year's proposed budget. We also urge the committee to approve an increase in funding to support greater availability of video technology for remote and hybrid hearings. Remote operations are now a part of the fabric of life, and OAH has successfully held remote hearings for the past 2 years via the WebEx platform, both by telephone and limited video hearings. At OAH's Oversight last month, we heard from Chief Judge Curry that she made the commitment to make remote hearings a permanent feature at OAH. We commend OAH's commitment to providing a variety of hearing types, and we just ask that the council adequately fund OAH's WebEx technology this fiscal year. Second, we urge the council to fund at least 1, and this is the bare minimum, IT positions at OAH. In its oversight testimony, OAH described its limited ability to fulfill its case and workflow responsibilities due to the limited IT staff capacity. OAH is suffering from high turnover and burnout amongst its 2 IT personnel because of an overwhelming workload. OAH is unable to accomplish its outstanding projects with these 2 IT staffers, like the searchable portal for final orders, because of the limited IT capacity. So we strongly urge the council to fund at least 1, if not more, IT positions at OAH. And last, we recommend that the committee provide funding to allow OEH to contract with an Amharic language interpretation service that would provide both interpretation and translation services. In fiscal year 2020, Amharic speakers were the second largest population of non-English speakers that OAH encountered, the first being Spanish speakers. And though we commend OAH for contracting with Spanish interpretation services, we believe that OAH should also be able to contract with Amharic interpretation services as well. A recent legal aid client requested an Amharic interpreter for their fair hearing. However, that interpreter did not show up. The ALJ had to figure out another interpretation service. And though we believe that alternative service provided quality interpretation, not all services or interpreters are trained to interpret for formal legal matters. But by contrast, OAH's language access policy states that all interpreters should be qualified and professional interpreters. So in order to provide a sufficient language access services to Amharic speakers, we ask that the committee increase funding to allow OAH to contract these services so that Amharic speakers are able to have professional and qualified interpretation. So in closing, we ask the committee to consider confirming funding for remote hearings, particularly video hearings via the WebEx platform, to fund at least one IT staff position at OAH, and to last prioritize language access to all LEP and NEP speakers, but in particular by contracting for Amharic language interpretation and translation services. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Danielle Burrs, welcome.
I'll try that without mute. Good afternoon, council member and members of the committee. My name is Danielle Burrs, and I am testifying in my role as Senior Policy Counsel for the Council for Court Excellence. CCE is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization with a mission to enhance justice for all in the district. Please note that in accordance with our policy, no judicial member of CCE participated in the formulation or approval of this testimony, and this testimony does not reflect the specific views of or endorsement by any judicial member of CCE. So, like everyone else on the panel, we were here for the performance oversight hearing in February, where we and others testified about two important needs: online access to OAH case records, and greater investment to ensure meaningful and effective participation in OAH proceedings by pro se litigants. We appreciate the dedication that the committee has shown through oversight of OAH, as demonstrated by the detailed request for a benchmark study in the previous budget and by taking the time to meet and discuss potential improvements. Today, CCE urges the committee to help OAH meet its obligations and goals through identifying funding for the following: to implement a public searchable case records portal, recruit and retain at least 5 IT positions at a competitive salary to avoid the attrition seen in current years. I know Alexis mentioned 1. We're going to push a little harder because they have some big projects ahead of them. Ensure recurring baseline funding for a full-time permanent resource center coordinator position. So there's someone there now who's doing a fantastic job who was already employed in another capacity, and we want to make sure that if this wonderful employee should move on, there will still be this position that will be filled at the appropriate level. Hire at least 2 support staff for the resource center so that the center and its phone lines are always fully staffed during business hours. Review of salaries as part of a full benchmark study. Increase ALJ salaries to retain current judges and recruit new judges for open vacancies. And hire an independent staffer for the Commission on Selection and Tenure, or the COST. For anyone who hasn't been through the documents, OAH held 8,959 hearings in fiscal 21 and 2,203 in just the first quarter of FY22. So clearly, any investment in this office will impact thousands of district residents. Next steps that can be taken right away regarding online access to case records include coordinating with OAH and OCTA representatives to confirm the precise budgetary needs to implement a searchable portal as soon as possible. So I did try to get the exact numbers from the preferred contractor that's listed in all the documents. They don't make that available online, and I wasn't able to get anyone on the phone. It doesn't mean I've given up. But I looked at a variety of services that are rated highly. The most expensive was $5,000 for a one-time fee per user. Others were as low as $150 per month. So even at the highest level, I think that gives us something to look at for what funding would be needed in fiscal 23. Regarding assistance for pro se litigants, again, CCE requests that this committee fund support and monitor the expansion of the OAH Resource Center in the remainder of fiscal 22 and provide any additional resources needed in 23 to ensure meaningful participation by pro se litigants. This should include ensuring a baseline of approximately $110,000 every year, salary and fringe for a permanent resource center director position, and funding for at least 2 support staff for the resource center, which total both of those positions together would only be about $126,000 based on current salaries and fringe. Finally, we strongly support the committee's request for a staffing benchmark study. And in my written testimony, there are a few items that could be added on to that might be useful. Thank you so much for your consideration, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Our next public witness is Fritz Mulhauser. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm Fritz Mulhauser, co-chair of the legal committee of the DC Open Government Coalition. Our work centers exclusively on public access to DC government records, to public bodies' meetings, and public data. We're here to talk about one thing today. You know what it is. My colleagues have alluded to it. The accessibility to the public of the products of this agency. It's worth just stopping to think. Their product is decisions. They decide difficult conflicts, and they matter to the citizens. An unemployment payment that was wrongly denied. We all know the computer glitches that caused that for thousands of our fellow citizens. A taxi ticket. That's the Amharic speakers who need some translation help. A hack inspector makes a mistake and writes a ticket incorrectly. It could mean livelihood. A Medicaid beneficiary where some insanely complicated regulation, just somebody made a mistake and denied a benefit. That's life-saving health care at stake. Or an unhoused person kicked out of a shelter by mistake. These are decisions that are important to individuals, and our wonderful 36 judges dig through them every day and decide what's right. The decisions are their product, and yet they're a secret. That can't be. And we've reviewed the mayor's budget, and we can't tell if there are resources to cure that. You know it's important. Your committee last year wrote about it. You said the computers are outdated and the system's inaccessible. You called it essential that the opinions get published, and you asked the agency to prioritize doing so this year, but they've done some planning and we can't see much else. Indeed, the chief's testimony at the Oversight didn't even mention the project. We wish it were more visible. So we looked at this year's budget to see if we could see a beacon of hope. And there's no additional IT staff, as you've heard. The 2 they have quit, probably burned out from keeping all the technology of every single judge going every day. And we're told by experts that probably 5 such people are needed for all the work to be done. And they'll need added funds for augmenting their case management computer contract, and maybe for consultants from Octo. But you can't tell that from the budget. You see general things like non-personnel services or contractual services. You can't tell if that's the coffee machine or the computer system. And information technology is a category, but it's even cut this year. So it's just impossible to tell if we're making progress in the coming year to solving this problem. The opinions are required by law, but they matter a lot to people. A person trying to decide whether to file a complaint wants to know what's happened with previous cases like theirs, and you just can't. the police union in 2016, they liked body cams. They said good information on police conduct will help everyone understand our good work. We trust the judges union and the chief judge are behind the publication of opinions. This is not boxes of papers to be stacked up in an archive. This is an electronic access system. Every court in the country is doing it. It's time for us to get on with it. We ask that you ask for a plan due October 1st with milestones for the coming year, resources that will be spent to meet those milestones, and ask for quarterly updates so we can all keep track of what's going on. This work is so important and it's got to shine in public. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Our final public witness, Michael Syndrome, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Michael Syndrome, disabled veteran, served our country more than most. It sounds like deja vu. I've heard the same testimony over and over and over again regarding the Office of Administrative Horrors in terms of making their decisions public. As indicated, that's what the public relies on, public benefits cases, food stamps, Medicaid, and so on. And the law is crystal clear. When there is an unrepresented pro se litigant, the government is not to be represented. It seems they have done just the opposite, that when there's a pro se litigant such as myself, they beat me up with 4 and 5 and 6 different lawyers to pounce on me and simply don't follow the law. There is also an issue when there is a problem with an administrative law judge. Where do we go? It seems like the police policing themselves. You go to the chief ALJ, but they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. I have serious issues regarding Medicaid, and I'm writhing in pain right now as I speak because I'm not getting the required dental care. And so the case initially was with Wanda Tucker, and then Deborah Carroll, and then ultimately Bennett Rushkoff, okay, who loves me, and I'm being facetious here. Every time he sees my name, he sees red and will deny me justice. In fact, I won't even get a hearing. For instance, I've got to get from my primary care provider authorization for any kind of medical device or prescription and so on. So that's been done by my primary care physician. It goes then to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy comeback is, well, we don't have it, or some kind of song and dance, personal problem, they get it. But then Rushkoff gets on the case and denies it with prejudice of what I'm entitled to under color of law. That ought not be. And as indicated to the respective Rushkoff and Company, that I spend more time in court than I do getting my medically necessitated health care. That ought not be. There's something dramatically wrong with the system, and it's being clearly Rushkoff has abused his discretion and exceeded his jurisdiction. So I'm deferring to you. And again, the question is, when you have a complaint against an ALJ, administrative law judge, where do we go? Chief judge is not going to do anything. All right. Not unlike the Commission on Judicial Disabilities and Tenure with Super Court and the Court of Appeals, you have an independent entity funded in part by the council that can field those complaints. There's nothing to my knowledge and understanding regarding administrative law judges, and that ought not be. I did want to make mention too, separate and apart, you're going to take the OIG. I have a medical appointment shortly, and I'm going to have to get there to Columbia. It's a long ways. But I want to read to you, Mr. Chair, a FOIA request I made of the D.C. auditor back. It's dated February 16th of 2012, addressed to me regarding ANC 4B checks. And it reads as follows. We were unable to locate any checks for third and fourth quarter of fiscal year 2005. Well, guess who was the treasurer at the time? Yes, none other than Muriel Bowser. I've alerted to the IG about this and other law enforcement. It seems to fall on 10 ears. It's not what you know, but who you know. And this is serious business here. No checks around. That means that ANC 4B should not have been funded at all unless and until the books were balanced. That hasn't been the case. So we can talk more offline about this. But again, no checks are all gone. And also with 5B, Ms. Bowser's father is a ANC commissioner, or was. All the checks gone too. No one's done anything. Hundreds of thousands of dollars unaccounted for. Sad but true. So I would appreciate, getting relief. It should be done with OAH, and it's not. And in conclusion, I want to share with you, it is the veteran, of which I happen to be a disabled veteran, served our country more than most. It is the veteran, not preacher, who has given us freedom of religion. It is a veteran, not reporter, who has given us freedom of press. It's a veteran, not poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is a veteran, not campus organizer, who has given us freedom to assemble. It is a veteran, not lawyer, who has given us right to a fair trial. It is a veteran, not politician, who has given us right to vote. It is a veteran who salutes flag, who served under the flag. God bless America and our troops. I did want to give a shout out to excellent work done by your counsel, Ms. Katie and Sean Cuttinghai, who has provided the wherewithal to be able to connect with you here and now. Any questions, I'd be delighted to field them when you see fit.
Thank you very much. Thank you to this entire panel. It was not very long ago that we had our oversight hearing, and we heard from all of you then. So similar issues now, but of course now we want to see where we can make progress in the budget. So I don't have a lot of questions. Hear you all loud and clear on. First and foremost, the publicly searchable case records portal. I think that's important. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when, and when must be soon. And I think we've made that very clear to the agency. It's not clear yet to me, looking at the budget, where they are in developing that. So we're going to have to dig into that today and get some specifics. My understanding from our oversight hearing is, as you pointed out, Ms. Christensen, is that the chief judge is on board with the permanent remote hybrid hearing. So we need to see sort of, where that is reflected in their budget or how they plan to make sure that that is covered. Let me ask a question about the IT positions. My understanding is that they do not have IT vacancies now. So I didn't realize that maybe there were two prior people who quit, according to your testimony, Mr. Mulhauser. Did they quit in close succession? Do you know?
I'm only relying on two sources. One, a person who works there who just says they're both gone and overworked and is likely the answer, and the budget, the oversight attachment, which lists both positions as vacant.
Okay.
I don't know more details.
Okay, let me double check that. That probably answers my next question, which was, I think it was Ms. Burrs who testified that they were overworked, and I was going to ask where that came from, how you reached that conclusion. Or maybe it was actually Ms. Christensen who said that. Yeah, Ms. Christensen, how did you reach that conclusion that the IT personnel are burning out?
Yes, it's actually OAH in their written oversight testimony discusses this in a question. And I cite that in my written testimony, which was also submitted this morning. And I believe, if you give me one moment, I can find a quote that I've used from that OAH testimony. The quote is that the demand on those two IT positions have exceeded their capacity, which has in some circumstances negatively impacted their workflow, their case and workflow. It's also said that OAH is going through a digital transformation, which requires additional staff. And so those are the pieces where you can cite that in the OAH testimony from this last month.
It's a good citation. Ms. Burrs, you at the end of your testimony, you mentioned or requested money for a staffing benchmark study. That across the agency? I might have missed a piece of context there. Is that for the entire agency?
Yes, for the entire agency. It does seem, as your committee wrote last year in directing the agency to try to undertake this, that there's both either not enough staff or if there's a creative way to involve volunteers, et cetera, to try to get that capacity up, that might be an option. But both a lack of capacity and a lack of appropriate pay. So, I know that it's difficult to hire across the government right now, but these are really critical positions, and we've seen a pattern of a difficulty in recruiting and retaining folks.
Thank you. Mr. Syndrome, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that you are in pain. I flagged this issue with my team, and I appreciate you giving a positive shout out to a couple of my team members. They are indeed talented and caring people. They have flagged this for our constituent services director to look into, so we'll be happy to assist with that. Your question about where to go with complaints for ALJs is a good question. I feel like I should know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that offhand, so I'm going to have to find out from the chief judge. I appreciate you raising that question, and I'll look into that today as well.
No worries, Mr. Chair. And if I may, I'm looking at an envelope that contained, for lack of a better word, an quote unquote order from the Office of Administrative Hearings with their return address, 20 cents postage due. Burnout, echoing it again. Previously, the one who deals with the mail, the staffers there, they are indeed overworked and they are underpaid. And I attempted to have, in a decision, the staffer come forward to testify at a hearing because I had not received an order previously. And that was the reason why I failed to respond. Anytime I am given ample notice, I don't sit on my laurels. I respond accordingly. But obviously, I can't do that if I'm not given the requisite order or ruling or whatever the case may be. But this has happened more than once, where the order has not been sent in-house. Again, Bennett Rushkoff claims to make an order sent out, but it's not, and it doesn't come. And again, looking at this envelope, this is it's postmarked March the 7th, very recent. And it's got here a postage due of 20 cents, meaning when there's postage due, it shouldn't be incurred upon me because the certificate from OAH indicates postage prepaid, but then I don't get what I need to respond in kind. So that has been problematic as well. And I can get you a copy of this so you can have it for your reference and then act on it accordingly.
Okay, I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank this panel. Very much appreciate you all being part of this hearing. We'll work through these issues with our government witness today, and hopefully make some progress in this upcoming fiscal year. So I appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Have a good and godly day.
Thank you. You too. So we will now turn to our first government witness, Inspector General Daniel Lucas, and I'll give him a moment to join us. I think the Inspector General and his team have joined, but if you have, I need you to turn your cameras on. Mr. Hurley, welcome. How are you today?
Very good, sir. Pleased to be here.
Good. Inspector General Lucas, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairperson White. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Good. And
my team's here, and we're all ready to go, sir.
Ms. Urusi, welcome. So anyone, Inspector General Lucas, I'm going to ask that we're going to swear you in, and anyone who may answer questions, so we'll ask you to be sworn in as well as it is the practice of this committee to swear in our government witnesses. So I'd ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Inspector General. You can begin your testimony when you are ready.
Good afternoon, Chairperson White, members of the committee. I'm Daniel W. Lucas, Inspector General for the District of Columbia. I am pleased to appear virtually before the committee to review the OIG's budget submission for fiscal year 23. Joining me to assist in the presentation are Ms. Jamie Rusi, Deputy Inspector General for Business Management, and Dr. James Hurley, Agency Fiscal Officer. Today, I would like to discuss three specific areas. First, the OIG's unique budget process. Second, our fiscal year 22 budget and expenditures to date. And third, our fiscal year 23 budget request. The OIG has a unique budget process as compared to other district agencies. Specifically, the OIG's enabling legislation states that the OIG shall prepare and submit to the mayor annual estimates of the expenditures and appropriations necessary for the operation of the OIG for the year. These estimates are then forwarded by the mayor to the council without revision, but subject to recommendations, including recommendations on reallocating any funds from the Inspector General's estimates to other items in the district budget. New for this year, I have included the OIG's estimates of the expenditures necessary to fund our operations in fiscal year 23. This information follows the OIG's statutory budget process and provides additional insight to this committee as it exercises its important budget oversight role. Before diving into our fiscal year 23 budget request, I would like to discuss this year's budget. During fiscal year 21, the OIG, like the rest of the district, saw mid-year reductions in its local budget due to the pandemic's fiscal impacts. Additionally, limitations on travel, in-person learning, as well as planning for unforeseen costs related to our office relocation and ultimately delay of the relocation resulted in the OIG underspending approximately $1.23 million. The fiscal impacts of the pandemic and OIG underspend set the baseline for our fiscal year 22 budget. At the start of fiscal year 22 budget formulation process, due to a marked reduction, the OIG did not fund 5 FTEs to ensure that we could meet the operational mission of the agency. In addition, we carried forward 2 FTEs that we did not hire for in fiscal year 21 due to the mid-year mark reduction. Thanks to both the executive and this committee, the OIG received several enhancements in both PS and MPS funding in our approved fiscal year 22 budget to address the residual impacts from the fiscal year. Also during fiscal year 22, the OIG worked with the executive to obtain an enhancement for PS and NPS resources to provide additional oversight of the district's $495 million CARES and $3.3 billion ARPA appropriations. The executive supported our request and enhanced the OIG's budget with an additional 10-term FTEs and $2.4 million in MPS resources. The OIG dedicated these resources to establish our pandemic oversight program. Thanks to the support of this committee, the OIC's fiscal year 22 budget also benefited with resources to unfreeze 2 FTEs and an additional $200,000 in MPS resource enhancements. Finally, the fiscal year 22 Budget Support Act statutorily established the Inspector General Support Fund. The support fund allows the OIG to keep 25% of criminal restitutions and recoveries and 25% of recaptured overpayments. We will use the resources in the support fund to support various unfunded projects. In total, the OIG saw its fiscal year 22 budget enhanced to $22.68 million from our fiscal year actual budget of $15.75 million. Now, I would like to update the committee on how we are spending our $22.68 million budget. The OIG's PS expenditures are below where we should be at this point in the fiscal year. We are working diligently to fill our vacancies with qualified personnel. In November, we participated in the DCHR Career Fair and ultimately hired 4 FTEs. Last week, we participated in the district's Spring Career Fair and have 9 offers pending. Given the success we have experienced with these career fairs, we are working with DCHR to plan an OIG-specific career fair to help fill our remaining vacancies. Notwithstanding our recent career fair successes, I remain concerned with our ability to efficiently fill our positions, as the district government faces the same issue. We continue to explore innovative ways to recruit and hire in accordance with the district's personnel regulations. As I explained during our fiscal year 21 performance oversight hearing, the OIG, like many other district agencies, is experiencing the effects of the Great Resignation. Exacerbating the shifting workforce is the fact that OIG positions are hard to fill. Our positions are in high demand in local governments, the federal government, and the private sector. Nationally, the Center for State and Local Government Excellence found jurisdictions struggled, just like the OIG, to fill law enforcement, information technology, and accounting positions. Beyond the macro level workforce impacts, we are working to fill several vital positions born from our realignment this fiscal year. Additionally, as a testament to the OIG's training and development efforts, we have internally promoted several of our staff, creating several positions to backfill. I encourage those who may be watching at home to look for OIG job opportunities at careers.dc.gov. The OIG's MPS expenditures are also below where we should be at this point during the fiscal year. We continue to be judicious in our spending to allow for unexpected costs and supply chain issues related to our office relocation. Also, while we have budgeted for out-of-town travel and training, these opportunities continue to be conducted virtually. I anticipate our MPS spending to increase dramatically during the second half of fiscal year 22. Later this spring, the OIG will contract for a district-wide risk assessment of CARES and ARPA spending. This risk assessment will inform subsequent oversight engagements using our POP term FTEs. We will also leverage MPS resources to bolster our data analytics capabilities, particularly related to our POP oversight work. Finally, we have about $1.8 million remaining in our capital fund account. We expect to expend these resources in fiscal year 22 for IT infrastructure at our new office. Notwithstanding all the activity related to the OIG's fiscal year 22 budget, and why we are here today is planning for our fiscal year 23 budget. At the beginning of fiscal year 23 budget formulation process, the OIG worked diligently to calculate the expenditures and appropriations required to operate in fiscal year 23. We submitted an initial fiscal year 23 budget of just over $19 million to meet the mark assigned to the OIG, not including resources related to our POP enhancement. We sent an enhancement request to the executive, which outlined the necessary resources for our OIG Vision 2023, which provides a balanced approach to oversight in the district. Our OIG Vision 2023 enhancement request included 17 FTEs and $2.6 million in MPS resources. The mayor's proposed budget supports 8.5 FTEs and $2.6 million in MPS. We plan to use these resources to proactively enhance our data analytics effort to deliver important insights to district leaders. The enhancement request will also support software tools and external expertise to further our proactive data analytics efforts. Additionally, the enhancement provided resources to backfill functions previously repurposed for external oversight work. Of note, we plan to procure external experts to evaluate and assist us with developing strategies to engage the entirety of our human capital management lifecycle. Once complete, an additional 2 FTDs, 3 in total, will be dedicated to the execution of our human capital management program. In the OIG's fiscal year 23 budget chapter, there's considerable shifting in both dollar and FTE resources. These changes are due in part to the OIG's realignment, removal of fiscal year 22 ARPA funding, and the net impacts related to the mayor's fiscal year 23 proposed changes. As we continue to study our fiscal year 23 proposed budget and identify any inaccuracies, we will work with the OCFO to correct and update the committee as it deliberates next year's budget. Our proposed budget includes the resources required to fully operationalize our OIG Vision 2023. These resources will be allocated across the OIG system to provide a synergistic balance of proactive, active, and reactive oversight. An additional note related to our fiscal year 23 budget chapter is an omission of the OIG's support fund. The OCFO will remedy this issue with a technical edit to our fiscal year 23 proposed budget. Regarding our support fund, I must also note that resources are only deposited in the support fund following a criminal investigation outcome or the recoupment of overpayments. This process can take some time, and we may not realize deposits into the fund this fiscal year. We are closely monitoring our outcomes to ensure funds are deposited as appropriate. Additionally, I believe there can be some modifications to our support fund legislation that can enhance its intended benefits. Shortly, I will provide proposed legislative enhancements for the committee to consider. Overall, I appreciate the mayor's fiscal year 23 proposed budget, which largely reflects our estimates of the expenditures necessary to operate the OIG next year. Throughout the budget formulation process, we had robust discussions with members of the Office of the City Administrator and its Office of Budget and Performance Management. These discussions have translated into the enhancements as well as the additional increases that address prior year budget reductions reflected in the OIG's fiscal year 23 proposed budget. In conclusion, Chairperson White and members of the committee, the OIG has a critical oversight role for the district. The district's $19.5 billion budget requires a proportional increase in oversight to ensure these resources are utilized economically, efficiently, and effectively. Beyond the current proposed budget, the district stands to receive an additional $3 billion from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. These additional resources will also require a proportional increase in oversight. We will pay particular attention to this construct throughout the remainder of this year and into next year as we plan our engagements and prioritize our work. Should we not have the resources to meet these increased oversight demands, I will work with the executive and the council to obtain the necessary resources. The OIG will continue its oversight work so this historic budget can benefit all district residents honestly, effectively, and fairly. I look forward to keeping the executive, the council, and the public informed of our oversight efforts and outcomes. This concludes my testimony, and I welcome the opportunity to respond to your questions.
Thank you very much, General Lucas. I appreciate the work that you and your team are doing and have done, and I appreciate your work with my committee team. Let me jump in and start with one of the things that we funded for this fiscal year, the $200,000 to support your risk assessment. Can you provide a status update on the use of that funding?
Yes, the work for that risk assessment is nearly completed. We're in the processes of providing briefs to stakeholders. We are on your schedule to provide you a brief of the entirety of that risk assessment.
Excellent.
And then shortly after that, we will publish our findings.
Perfect. Want to turn to some of the issues you mentioned in your testimony. The law requires the mayor to forward to us without revision your budget request based on your estimation of the expenditures necessary for your operation. Is that right?
That's correct.
And looking at the table you provided, you estimate that you need $25,792,978 and 139 full-time employees, and sent that to the mayor. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The mayor sent us her budget proposal for the OIG is $24,975,313 and 129 employees. I think that's what your testimony. Okay. And one of the things you noted at the end that I want to flag for the public, just because it's something that you pay a lot of attention to. It's something on my radar. Certainly there have been and continue to be substantial number of federal dollars flowing through the city beyond what is already a very large $19.5 billion budget for next fiscal year, but also $3 billion that's going to flow to the district through the federal government for federal infrastructure funds. And that does require, as we know, oversight and work from the Office of the Inspector General. So I'm glad that you mentioned that at the end of your testimony. Do you have thoughts based on sort of the work that you and your team did with ARPA funding or any other sort of large blocks of federal funding? What will be necessary from OIG's perspective to make sure the right sort of controls and oversights are in place for this anticipated $3 billion budgets? Do you have a sense of sort of what that may look like in terms of staff or supply needs different than sort of normal operations?
From the staffing perspective, right now, we have the necessary skill sets in-house because we've done a lot of work in the infrastructure space over the years. So we retain that expertise. But the number of FTEs may be a challenge for us as we get fully staffed up with the enhancements from this budget, the enhancement we got from CARES Act. We're going to take a look to see if we have enough bodies to put toward this work. But I do anticipate coming back to the executive and the committee probably in next year's budget or mid-year to have a conversation if we feel as though we're short in terms of FTEs.
Okay.
Because I do intend to devote resources specifically to these areas. Okay.
And to your knowledge, do you happen to know if any of the federal money is required to be used for the type of work or oversight that OIG does?
Yes, there are going to be federal oversight requirements. We just don't know what the allocation coming from into the district that should be going to our office.
Okay, excellent. And we'll keep an eye on that with you. With regard to the Inspector General Support Fund that we passed last year to support your operations, you mentioned that it was omitted from the budget book and that it was done in error. We saw that as well. Is there any money in that fund currently?
Right now, there is no money in that fund. as we speak. You and the public should know sometimes these recoveries and restitutions take some time to make it back to the city. For your information, we had a sentencing back in March of 2019, where individuals were given nearly 4 years of jail time in order to pay $9.2 million in restitution. We didn't see that money come back to the district until October of last year. So nearly a year and a half before we saw anything from that particular case. So it will take some time for these recoveries to hit the fund.
Okay. And you mentioned in your testimony proposed legislative changes to the fund. What sort of general changes are you seeking or recommending?
Probably to increase the fund limit from 1 million to 3 million, and to be able to roll over unspent budget authority, a portion of our unspent budget authority into that fund.
Okay. And why the increase? Why is the increase necessary?
Because we anticipate, the additional dollars going to enhance, our work. A lot of the things that we take out of hide within the agency to perform, we can use that fund to readily be able to do a lot more things. Things like in some of our investigative cases, we may not have, subject expertise or a particular tool that we need. We can quickly pivot to the fund and fund those kinds of things. We also want to use the fund to improve our recommendation follow-up program by creating dashboards and making more information available to the public as to the status of OIG recommendations. And then finally, and this is something that's very, very important to me, is to be able to have strategic marketing and public relations. Too often, do I learn, that members of the public and indeed some people in government not fully understand what the OIG does and what we have done on behalf of the district. We feel like that we can have a consistent marketing and public relations effort. The OIG will learn more about what's going on in the district that we may have to respond to. And the citizens can also, have a better understanding of how their dollars are being overspent. I look at it as being able to attract more customers to our work.
Yeah. In my review of your Schedule A submitted to the budget office, it looks like you have 41 vacancies, including 10 new ones you got in your revised budget from federal funds. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Generally speaking, probably over the last 5 years or so, we've run with about 22 to 23 vacancies, due to people moving on and people promoting and so on and so forth. But when the pandemic hit, that number began to creep up. So we ended up, we're right around 32, not counting the POP enhancements that we received. One of the challenges, that we've struggled with, and mind you, many of the vacancies are for investigators and auditors. Now, mind you, that the competition is very fierce for these individuals, and sometimes we can't compete, with our competitors, particularly in the federal and private sector. And so, instead of just allowing that condition, to exist, what we're in the process of doing is trying to better understand how to position ourselves for talent. Mm-hmm. We're going to be bringing on a consultant, that's going to help us understand how to do that, and also help us understand how we can touch each component of the human capital life cycle, so that we're continually, educating people about opportunities within the OIG. We can bring on the right people. And then most importantly, we can keep those people. Yeah. I believe once we do that and we apportion the right number of FTEs to this effort, I think we can turn this around.
Okay. Yeah, I hope so. I think it's going to require a lot of attention. One, because the sort of the size of the vacancy is pretty high, and this is also a time sort of across sectors across the country, significant employment sort of mobility, migration, whatever you want to call it. But it presents a significant challenge to employers, which in some ways is not a bad thing, except that we have to figure out how, as you said, to attract and retain people in a time where people are looking for something different or more, and we've got to be able to be competitive there. So there's certainly a challenge in front of you. But given the vacancy rate, how can we be confident that you'll be able to staff up to 129 FTEs that are in the proposed budget?
All I can say, council member, is we're going to do our level best because we have to work with DCHR, to get vacancies posted, get people interviewed and get them hired, if we make selections. But there's other challenges. Sometimes we're creating new positions, new functions that require new PDs and certifications. That takes time. That was one of the challenges we had with our POP vacancies. But we're working very hard internally as well as with DCHR to try to get people on board. Now, I'll caution you in the public. I'm very, very leery about just hiring to hire, because we need to make sure, this agency needs to make sure that the individuals that they're hiring, one, can do the job, they fit our culture, so they can get the work done. I don't want to just hire to turn around to create another vacancy when we've hired the wrong person. So we're going to deliberately go through this process as quickly as we possibly can.
I agree with you. I mean, certainly having people and having the right people are different things sometimes, and you want to make sure you have the right people, because it can take longer to hire, but it's still, that's less time than hiring the wrong person, training them leaving, then having to hire somebody else. And so you do want to do it right. And we're not going to, certainly from the perspective of this committee, we're not going to sort of want you to feel forced to just put bodies in the seats. But of course, we all want you to move as aggressively as possible.
Right, and council member, I expect to continue this conversation, about staffing, with the executive as well as yourself, where we do come across insurmountable challenges, because I do want to bring the people on board, but I don't want to do it in a reckless fashion.
Yeah. Somewhat along these lines, but I just want to ask about these two positions in particular. You had asked us in this current budget to unfreeze two positions, a staff assistant and an investigator. Both those positions still look to be vacant. Did you have a timeline for filling those positions?
I believe one is filled, and we have a candidate for the second one, which is going to be an admin investigator.
Okay, that's good. You also mentioned in your testimony that you're planning to procure external experts to evaluate and assist us with developing strategies to engage the entirety of our human capital management life cycle. What does that mean?
Well, what does that mean? It means, one, we don't have the expertise in-house to evaluate, the function of attracting and retaining employees, how we're doing. We did some preliminary work in this area, just so you and the public knows that, the human capital, life cycle, includes functions to attract, hire, onboard, evaluate individuals, develop individuals, recognize, and when it comes time for them to move on, you can do that. And we did some preliminary work, and what we learned about ourselves using the traffic light analogy, that we were either red or yellow in most of those areas, meaning that we don't do these things as a matter of course, as a function that we do each and every day to make sure we're attracting good people, taking care of those individuals. We generally are reactionary in this area. And so what I endeavor to do with bringing this consultant on board and putting more FTEs to these functions is to make sure our human capital life cycle is functioning on a daily basis instead of just reactionary. That is, someone's leaving, we have to recruit, we got to do some interviews, and we have to bring a person on board. I'm more interested in, on each and every day, we're doing something to let people know that the OIG's here and it's a great place to work. When we bring you on board, we will take care of you, whether you want to stay here or just grow into your next job. I'm trying to create that environment here with bringing on the consultant and staffing up to touch all of the points in the human capital life cycle.
Okay. Do you, how much funding, is there funding for that currently or in the proposed budget?
Yes, it is. We got that through the 23 enhancement to support our Vision 2023 efforts.
Okay. And you requested that the mayor give you 8.5 more FTEs than what you ultimately, what we saw in the budget proposal. Am I correct that your testimony is that OIG can still execute your OIG Vision 2023 plan without those additional FTEs?
That is correct. We're just going to have to do some other things in the area of our proactive data analytics work. For example, we may bring on a contractor to fulfill some of those functions. But ideally, we would like to have those resources as FTEs.
Okay. What the FTEs that are not in the proposed budget, if that ends up being the final budget, what FTEs are you sacrificing? What would those folks be doing?
Those folks would be doing the large portion of our data analytics proactive engagements. These are the engagements, as you know, Chairperson, the district has an enormous amount of data, but not very many people are examining that data to look for anomalies, to see how well we're doing or to see where we're not doing well. And so part of our Vision 2023, the proactive part, is exploiting those data sets to learn more about ourselves. And more importantly, perhaps, find where fraud is occurring or share with district agencies where they can do things better that they may not quite understand. Just to give you an idea of a potential project, as you know, DCPS and DGS has had challenges with HVAC systems in the schools. And one of our analytic projects, we could take disparate data sets. For example, we can look at the DGS work order system, cross-reference that with DCPS requests, cross-reference that with OCFO payment data, and then overlay that information across the district to see where things are occurring or perhaps not occurring. Through this look, we could also see where we're doing the same work over and over in a particular area. We could see where perhaps maybe some wards may get more response than others. But this is the kind of data analytic work we can do. But in order to do that, we have to bring on, the data architects, the data scientists to set up these queries and such to bring these answers to bear.
So, I mean, it sounds like this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, sort of the part of the future of OIG's work. And frankly, on the HVAC system, I might say if I can pay for that out of pocket, it has just become so bad in the work order system. But in seriousness, is it a question of whether this will happen or when this will happen? That is to say, is this something that you see seriously as part of the future of OIG?
I absolutely do. We've been incrementally working toward this place probably since 2017. We've been manually doing some of this work, but right now we think it's time. This is the future, of OIG work, because it's not just about finding things that are wrong. It's also about helping people get better. And to the extent we can access data, do some analysis, and show people in near real time, where they are in a particular program or process, it's game changing.
Well, I'm excited about that. I hope we can move it along as quickly as possible and support that work. I don't see anywhere else in the government with both the capacity and the mission to do that kind of work. So I appreciate that you're looking there, and I do want to be very, very supportive of that.
Appreciate that, Chairperson.
You mentioned that you budgeted for in-person travel and training for your team in FY22. All that training has remained virtual. Does your 23 budget include that funding for in-person training and travel?
Yes, it has. And one of the things that we're going to be looking forward to in the 23 budget is sending some of our 1811s down to FLETC for their law enforcement training. It's about $25,000 per agent. But once they go down there, when they come back, they are pretty much full up rounds to conduct criminal investigations.
Okay. Where the budget book shows a large increase in your office's operating budget is in your information technology and customer service budget lines. The information technology increase looks to be tied to a large increase in contract costs. What's happening with that IT spending increase?
I believe that most of that is related to software we're purchasing to strengthen our analytics capability. And I also believe some of that is for the IT infrastructure moving into our new facility. We're looking for enhanced cloud storage and security, and some additional training for our IT staff.
Okay. And the customer service budget line increase is adding 4 FTEs. What do these people do, and what's going on with that?
That's 2 additional FTEs in human resources and 1 FTE in contracting and procurement.
Okay. This year, you're proposing adding 2 new activities in the budget, funding the establishment of the Office of the Executive Secretariat and the External Affairs Division. What's the goal of that shift?
The goal of that shift is first to talk a little bit about external affairs. Most of the work that we do here in the OIG is for external partners, external stakeholders, and the public. In order to do that well, I believe we have to have a dedicated function that constantly and consistently touches those areas through marketing, through engagements with members of council, the executive, media. We kind of do those things, prior to this, we did those things hit and miss, and we weren't very effective at it. We had a leadership offsite, and this was one of the things that we talked about, which was, how do we get more customers? How do we get confidence in our customers and our stakeholders to come and talk to us? In order to do that, you have to have a dedicated function that touches those areas constantly. And on the executive secretariat, one of the things that we realized about ourselves is we create a lot of information. Information is just information. It doesn't become knowledge until you figure a way to bring pieces together and then extract that information to answer questions. And so what the executive secretariat will do for us is to make sure we have good information flow through the agency, as well as a way to exploit our information and turn it into knowledge. For example, we often get questions from the executive or the council about, something that's happening in the district. And 9 times out of 10, we would have already looked at that issue, but the information is in disparate places throughout the agency. So I would have to send someone off to query different databases, look through different files to get that answer. So what we're trying to do now with our knowledge management efforts is, if you ask me, well, how much work has been done to look at the money that we're spending on HVACs in the school system? I would say, let me get back to you, council member, and I may get you an answer in a week or so. What we're trying to do now is create that system where we can just simply quickly make that query across our data, and it will come back with an answer for us. So these two new divisions within the agency will enable us to be far more efficient than we are now.
Does this require more than sort of funding and technology on your end? Because to sort of analyze data, you have to have that data. That the council often has difficulty getting responses from the executive on data. So, I mean, how do you feel confident that this won't be sort of a waste of money that sort of meets a roadblock where the data lives? Okay,
for us, we're only talking about our data.
Okay,
the data that we create, the information that we create.
But if we use sort of the HVAC issue as an example, if you're going to search various databases and look for anomalies, you're going to have access to the information that would lead you to various conclusions or allow you to do the analysis.
Right. Now I was setting that particular example up as if we had already done, work over the years on that issue.
Okay.
And we would just be simply querying our own data.
Okay.
Now, on the data analytics side, in the project that I described to you earlier, now that's a different kettle of fish, because we would have to have access to those data sets. Now, our enabling legislation, our read of it says, yes, you do have access, you should have access to that information. And we are in the process of working with the executive to make sure we have that access. But there are times, when we believe we should have access to something and we're met with roadblocks. Mm-hmm. And so that condition is just there. So that's going to take a legislative fix, to clarify what it means when the legislation said the OIG shall have access to X, Y, and Z, that it really means that's what the OIG shall have access to. And it should come with something that discusses non-compliance. If we clarify what any and all means, there should also be a discussion on, if you don't comply, here are the remedies.
That is the challenge. Council faces that challenge as well. I think it should be clarified, but we can't cut budgets or, other folks get hurt. So I look forward, if you all have thoughts on remedies, we certainly will be.
Sure, and we plan to work with your team on that language, because at the end of the day, if I'm unable to get what I need and get what I need when I need it, it slows down, the oversight process.
Oh, all too well. With regard to your capital budget, which, as you mentioned, has a balance of almost $1.2 million for IT upgrades, our numbers suggest you haven't spent any money from that project since FY20. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. It will be spent this year.
Okay. General Lucas, those are all the questions I have. I again want to thank you and your team for the work you do. I do look forward to working with you all throughout this budget process, and we will certainly be engaged between now and the final budget. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Chairperson. The OIG is indeed on a very, very exciting road with our Vision 2023. We're excited about, the additional resources we have and the plans we have to do oversight across the district. And then the last thing I want to say, thank you to you, Chairperson White, and I also want to thank my team for the hard work that they do each and every day on behalf of the district.
Absolutely, I join you in that. Thanks. Well, we hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day. We will now turn to our next government witness. We're going to welcome Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the Office of Risk Management. Director Ross, welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As is the practice of this committee, I'm going to put you under oath, so I'd ask that you raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Wonderful. Well, you can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Great. Good afternoon, Chairman White, members and staff of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I am Jed Ross, Chief Risk Officer and Director of the District of Columbia's Office of Risk Management, ORM. I am pleased to testify before you today, not only as the Director of ORM, but also as a longtime district resident and advocate for the district, believing wholeheartedly in the Mayor's strategic investments that support our shared DC values. Last week, Mayor Muriel Bowser presented her fiscal year 2023 budget and financial plan, a fair shot, the district's 27th consecutive balanced budget. The $19.5 billion budget proposal includes investments to address public safety, provide more affordable housing, increase job training and opportunities, assist with economic recovery, and more. These investments reflect the key priorities identified by district residents at budget engagement forums during the budget formulation process and provide every Washingtonian with a fair shot. As a district resident and employee, I'm extremely proud to work under the mayor in this administration, which has been an outstanding steward of the district during the COVID-19 pandemic. I too appreciate the leadership you, Chairman White, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, and all members of the council have shown during this unprecedented public health emergency. As you're aware, ORM's mission is to reduce the probability, occurrence, and cost of risk to the District of Columbia government. To fulfill this mission, ORM works to institutionalize and systematize the practice of risk management within district government agencies, and to reduce the likelihood and severity of potential losses through the implementation of effective risk prevention and control strategies. We achieve these objectives by providing risk management leadership, guidance, and support to district agencies through ORM's 4 main divisions: the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program, the Tort Division, the Risk Prevention and Safety Division, and the Captive Insurance Agency. Together, ORM's divisions work to foster a culture of risk awareness and promote risk management across our government. The fiscal year 23 proposed budget reflects this mission and addresses ORM's top objectives for the year, including improve and maintain district governments, and more specifically, ORM's efficiency, transparency, and responsiveness, identify, measure, analyze, and mitigate the district government's exposure to risk and liability, administer a customer-oriented public sector workers' compensation program that provides benefits for disability or death of a district government employee sustained while in the performance of duty, improve vendor and provider relations to the benefit of district government's injured workers, and collect monies owed to the district as a result of the third-party tortfeasors whose negligence or intentional acts result in damage and loss to the district. Today, my testimony will focus on ORM's 4 budgeted agencies, which support these objectives: RK0, the Office of Risk Management; RJ0, the Captive Insurance Agency; BG0, the Employee Compensation Fund; and ZH0, the Settlements and Judgments Fund. Office of Risk Management, RK0, represents ORM's primary operating budget. In the mayor's fiscal year 23 budget, ORM's operating budget is $4,100,410 with 31 full-time equivalents, FTEs. The FY23 budget reflects a net decrease of $3,702 and 1 full-time equivalent FTE under the approved FY22 budget. This budget decrease aligns personal services and fringe benefits with projected costs and aligns available resources in the agency management program, primarily focused on professional service fees and equipment. The Captive Insurance Agency, RJO, mission is to provide medical malpractice insurance for local nonprofit health centers and to administer and procure various property and liability insurance policies aimed at protecting the district government, its assets, and resources against potential losses. It is also through the captive that the district government binds its insurance. Similarly, through the captive, ORM's Tort Division administers the subrogation fund, collecting money owed to the district for losses caused by third parties, much like an insurance underwriter. In fiscal year 23, the captive budget is $10,479,928, reflecting a net increase of $4,594,825 over the fiscal year 22 budget. This increase allows funding for increased insurance premiums, primarily for real property and cyber liability insurance, salaries and fringe benefits for the associated 6 FTEs within the agency, professional service costs, and alignment of resources with operational spending goals. The captive's budget is comprised of both special purpose revenue funds and local funds. However, in FY23, the primary budget increase of local funds relates to the hardening or difficult insurance markets, particularly in the real property arena. The captive's manager, who is also the district's insurance program administrator, continually works with the district's insurance brokers to ensure the district government participates in the most competitive markets and receives the best possible rates. ORM is confident that the district currently has an insurance program in place to best protect the district taxpayers. Employee Compensation Fund. The Employee Compensation Fund provides fiscal resources to administer the Public Sector Workers' Compensation Program for district government employees and to pay the costs of claims pursuant to applicable district laws. The Employee Compensation Fund proposed budget for fiscal year 23 is $22,219,334 with 49 FTEs, representing a fiscal year 23 budget net increase of $72,765 over the approved fiscal year 22 budget. The increase includes non-personal services to align resources with operational spending, mainly related to professional services and supply costs. The budget is comprised entirely of local funds. Settlements and judgments. The settlement and judgments provides fiscal resources to settle claims and lawsuits and pay judgments in most types of civil cases filed against the district. The proposed budget for fiscal year 23 is $28,024,759 and does not include any FTEs. The fiscal year 2023 budget represents no change from the approved fiscal year 22 budget. The budget is comprised entirely of local funds. Through these 4 budget lines, ORM will continue to provide operational support and service to our constituents, district government employees, and partners. ORM is dedicated to providing risk counsel and support through partnerships, education, and compliance. ORM will continue to operate with its core values of problem solving, accountability, ethics, competency, collaboration, innovation, and most important of all, compassion. We appreciate the commitment of the community and the district to building a strong and resilient economy. Like other district agencies, ORM will remain steadfast in our approach and will strive to provide the best level of customer service possible to our constituents and partners. Thank you, Chairman White and members of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities for the opportunity to testify in support of the Mayor's fiscal year 23 budget. This budget reflects the impacts of the global coronavirus pandemic and Mayor Bowser's ongoing commitment to good government and fiscal responsibility without compromising our shared DC values. ORM looks forward to your support and our continued partnership. And at this time, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director. I want to start by discussing FTEs. ORM will lose 1 full-time staff member under this budget. There's a decrease of 6 continuing FTEs and an increase of 5 term full-time positions. This creates a net decrease of 1 full-time employee. Is that right?
It's correct. Yes, we'll lose 1 position. Just to be clear, the difference between the term appointments and the permanent appointments really is just more of a mechanism issue, but our FTE counts won't change, the functions won't change, our ability to still provide services won't change. So we are in a good position with the budget as proposed.
And ORM has no vacancies, is that correct?
I believe we do have 2 vacancies right now. We've been very diligent at following through whenever a vacancy occurs through a resignation or what have you. Generally, it's been all resignations, much like other agencies are dealing with. We have been very fierce and steadfast at trying to recruit right away and backfill those positions. So we are in a pretty good position comparative to many others. That does not mean that we do not have a number of new employees who are training and providing support to, just as you spoke, Council Member, about the great migration that is occurring, that is also impacting the agency.
So it's a very real thing, which sort of makes me concerned about this shift from FTEs to term positions. What's the difference between the FTE?
So from a practical standpoint for the employees, they get their full benefits. There really is not much by way of a distinction. It's more a matter of kind of the following an HR process in order to make sure that we're able to fully staff and do it fast and efficiently. But generally, the employees, they come on in a term appointment and then they transfer over into permanent appointments is kind of the process in district government more generally. And in this particular circumstance, they, though some of the people who've left, when they're replaced, they've been replaced by employees into term appointments who still have full district government benefits. They provide all the same services as filling a normal FTE. So it's really, in my mind, I never view it as a big distinction. I don't view it as a negative. So it really has no practical or major impact on that employee or on the agency. It's a matter of making sure that we're aligning the budget into the right category in order to make the payments appropriately from the right place.
Okay. So the term positions, I mean, it sounds like term means it's for a limited period of time. Is that right?
So it's a 13-month. You typically, in order to ensure that you get your full district government benefits, it's a 13-month term, and then those just get renewed until we can move over into the permanent methodology, which is what occurs. DCHR has a rule that you can have employees for no more than 4 years in a term appointment, and then they become permanent employees. So again, it's just there were a few newer employees that were brought on, and as a result, that is why there's the shift into the budget classes. But realistically, they're full employees. They're treated no differently than anyone else. They're full benefits. They're regular FTEs, regular employees to me and to everyone on the team. It's more of a budget mechanism. No distinctions. Nobody getting separated. No one's getting separated based on term appointments. When they get hired.
There's no guarantee that the term will be extended, right?
There is no guarantee, correct.
So there is a difference then, right? So if we're recruiting, right, and I'm like posting a term appointment and the person doesn't know if it's going to be more than 13 months, that's going to change the pool of applicants, right? Perhaps the qualification of the applicants as well.
I will say, I mean, that is definitely true, Councilmember. What I will say is we've not had any issues or concerns as it relates to that. The only issues and concerns where we have had challenges are hard to fill positions in areas that are very, very complex, and the battle for getting highly qualified candidates is fierce, right? For our upper level positions. But in most of these, that is not necessarily the case. We've not had people overarchingly leave saying that is a reason why I've left, right?
Right, but I'm talking about people, sort of coming, right? I mean, we need talented people in the high level positions, but we need the most talented people in every position.
In every position, correct.
And so like the most talented people, if they are choosing between a full-time position and a term position, they're probably going to take the full-time position. So I would say that this is pretty significant. You're saying it's not significant. To me, it's
Councilmember, yeah, Councilmember, I would say that our vacancy rate kind of shows that we're doing okay, right? I mean, we are getting qualified, capable people in, and the fact that we have 2 vacancies right now shows that there are people still applying, that there are people taking jobs, and that we are still performing the functions and doing an excellent job at responding to our operational impacts.
Go ahead.
But I will definitely take that into consideration and work through that as something to address, and know that you should know that I am undertaking steps regarding that myself.
Okay. I mean, it's a coincidence, but close friend of mine was applying for jobs only a few months ago, and reached out to me for advice, not in your agency, but reached out to me for advice on a term position, made them very nervous as an applicant. And I think that's probably the normal course. So that is something that I mean, at least I see as significant. I hear your point that there's a pretty low vacancy rate in the agency.
And Councilmember, I would say that applicants oftentimes have more concerns about a probationary period than in the first 12 months, employees are under a probationary period and can be separated for those reasons. So oftentimes that actually is voiced as a bigger concern when doing recruitment in district government. Not proffering to make any changes to any of that. In terms of the time period is very similar. There's not very much by way of distinction. And if anything, 13 months is longer than that 12-month period.
So if the pay and the benefits are the same, help me understand why the shift from the full-time positions to the term full-time positions.
Councilmember, we have historically brought on almost all of our employees in term appointments. Not all of our employees, but a large majority of our employees were brought on term appointments. It's been a kind of a historic practice of the agency. And then we have converted those employees throughout the years. We went through an effort with DCHR to follow that process of converting lots of employees in that way. And we will, as I said, I'm in the process of continuing to do that effort for employees. So it has not been a scenario where there's been a swath of employees their terms have not been renewed. And I have constantly assured all employees, if you do good work and you are a great team player, no one is ever in jeopardy. And that's not something that's occurring at the agency. So I think we're in a good position. I think we're doing everything that we should be doing. I think that we are recruiting where we need to recruit. I think that we have a great team who've done an amazing job during the pandemic. And we have not entered or encountered a situation where any of our HR practices have resulted in mass migration or anything like that.
I got it. Why does the agency have a history of bringing on people in term positions?
So when we started, when we transitioned from our third-party administrator with a workers' compensation program, a large portion of our funding kind of converted from contracts to non-contract positions, and not understanding kind of where the land would lie eventually as it related to $10 million worth of payments and the management of funds. It was very uncertain. And so as a result, it was important to be able to kind of pursue it from that perspective to make sure that we knew kind of where things would be. I would much rather pursue that process than doing a whole bunch of reductions in force. But at the end of the day, it's never been the case where we've had to do anything from a budgetary perspective. With your support, with the mayor's support, we have been in a position to continue to fund all of our positions. And then as a result, it's really a non-issue, right? The distinction, if they're filling the same numbers of FTEs that have been allocated to us from a budget perspective, whether it's a term appointment or not, has no distinction in my mind, has no distinction in how everyone's treated. So that is really why the historic practice had taken place and kind of where we go from the recruitment perspective in order to bring people on and then transition them into permanent positions.
Okay. I'm always nervous when government says we do this thing this way because that's how it's been done. Has the agency in recent years looked at, do you have retention numbers to understand sort of how long people stay at the agency, particularly by sort of by grade level?
I don't have any of that information like offhand, but it's something we definitely can look at and definitely get back to you. I'm very proud of my team and lots of longstanding employees. We have an amazing track record of hiring both district residents and minority employees. We are, I would say, one of the most diverse agencies in the district, actually, on a number perspective. So I'm just very proud of my team, and definitely happy to get you information about retention and how long people have been with the agency and what have you.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, if what we find is that it's not broke, we're not going to try to fix it. But I will dig into this a little bit more, just to make sure we're not missing anything.
Sure.
There's a new activity in the agency management program called risk management. It wasn't listed on the common budget questions as a restructuring in accounting. It existed in FY20 and FY21, but not in FY22. The proposed budget doesn't include much detail on the purpose of this activity, but it does note a shift of $218,000 to fund it. Does this activity have an operational impact, or is this just an accounting shift?
It's all accounting. There is just ensuring that the money is in the right comp source groups. based on what we found through prior years. So there is no special new operational endeavor related to that shift.
Okay. And how did you your office come to the $218,000 budget for this activity?
We worked with our OCFO to allocate to the right comp source groups to say, based on this last year, we had more money for people in this area than we needed, and then we added to comp source group shifts in order to make sure that it was allocated to the right place. So our budget analysts and our agency fiscal officer recommended, along with with my deputy director, about where it needed to be, and we reviewed it and said, yes, this is paying for people and for non-personal services from the right categories now, to make sure that we didn't have to do budget exercises throughout the year trying to get it right on the front end.
There's also an increase of $20,000 across the agency for what's called IT hardware acquisitions. This money was shifted from other programs. For example, $5,000 was taken from the financial management program to fund this. What IT acquisitions do you plan to make with the $20,000?
So yeah, each year we have to, when we have computers that have kind of met their expected life expectancy, we will end up having to buy new computers. During the pandemic, we had to purchase new headsets. We also had to buy licenses for special functions in order to most effectively use Microsoft Teams while employees are not in the office. So there are different acquisitions of hardware and equipment that we need to make in order to ensure that we're able to meet our mission and our operational goals. Obviously very minor in the overall budget and for all of our staff, but that's what allocating those dollars is for, and shifting it around.
Okay. After the performance oversight hearing, we got a flood of concerns specific to how difficult navigating the workers' compensation process is. For example, this week we helped a resident find your 9A form to file an appeal. I understand that you have a helpline where residents should be able to call and get guidance when they're having issues to navigate the process. Is it accurate that only one person works at the helpline?
That is not accurate. It's actually 202-442-HELP. So we were very thankful to our partners and getting the number for all district agencies that people can reach out for help. No, we actually have around 4 or 5 employees who at any time can answer the call line, and then we also then assign those to claims examiners who can help as well. So we actually have a fantastic administrative team headed up by Berlina Smith. She sends out regular data about their call answer timeframes within certain rings. So we have a sophisticated system, and we have an after-hours system that tracks and gives us the data. So if anyone calls, we're able to get them the information and walk them through exactly what they need and get them that information. So please let your staff know that if any constituents ever reach out and they need help, all they have to do is call 442-HELP, and then we will be sure to get them the information so they can readily and easily access our services.
Okay. So who answer? You mentioned 4 to 5 people. Are these people who shift from other duties to certain time slots when they answer the calls?
These are claims admin staff. So they do multiple things. They obviously help in processing mail and help in terms of, communicating with the claims adjusters about inquiries, but they are, we constantly have people to answer the phones. It's not going to voicemail. It's not, not being responded to. It's being tracked and managed daily by our claims admin staff all day, every day, during work hours.
Okay. So okay.
It's a surprise to me to hear somebody say that there's no one answering the phone, because I can tell you with certainty, I'm getting reports on a regular basis about how they're being answered. And we have a system that tracks that. So if there are phone calls that are coming that aren't being answered, it's 98% of the time that we're getting to every phone. That's coming in.
We got calls, several calls indicating sort of difficulty and confusion with the navigating the workers' compensation process, and we've received concern that the helpline is understaffed. I can't say specifically that anybody said they didn't get an answer.
Yep, we have 4 or 5 claims admin team staff members who are always managing on that line. There may be times when 1 or 2 people are answering the questions, but even if it were to go over, there are other people who can pick it up, and we will get it. But I'll just say all our levels of program management are managing that to ensure that we're being responsive and providing good customer service to any constituent who inquires.
Okay. Shifting gears a bit, I appreciate you sending the list of 525 providers that provide treatment to injured workers under your workers' compensation program. I have heard from advocates that the full list is never sent to claimants, but that they're given an option of 2 to 3 doctors. Any reason why you don't give claimants the full list when choosing a care professional?
I know generally what happens is there's usually it's an iterative conversation. And so what will happen is when a claimant reaches out, our team will say, okay, are you looking for somebody that's close to work? Are you looking for somebody that's close to your house? Or this is the specialty that you need. And then we do the geographic search in order to try and help that individual and then give them a list of people based on what they're requesting of us. Mm-hmm. So if somebody were to say, well, the people that you've given, right, and it's just whatever's closest, whatever's appropriate based on the care that individual needs. If they say for some reason that doesn't work, or they want something different, or they want something somewhere else, then we're more than happy to provide it. It can be a daunting task, especially for many of our district employees, to get a list of 500 people to then try and figure out who you need to go to and why. So that's why we do it. We have nursing staff who help in evaluating what that person's needs are, and then we can give them the relevant specialists so they can actually be responsive. So it's actually a customer service function. But if somebody says, I want more, I want something different, or I need something else, without a doubt, we give them all the information that they would ever request. There's never a scenario where we want to just inundate somebody with 500 names that they then have to figure it out, when somebody's a hand specialist and somebody's a back specialist and somebody's a thoracic specialist. That just is not efficient for an injured person to try and figure out on their own. So we provide that as a service.
Sure. Still on this subject, in your written responses to our follow-up questions from the oversight hearing, you noted that all injured workers are able to pursue their own medical expert opinions for additional consideration. How much weight does ORM give independent medical expert opinions?
So all medical opinions are weighed, equally. The medical information, it's a continuity of care, right? So all of your medical advice, all the medical guidance, all the medical determinations kind of go together. Ultimately, it's a part of the managed care for the total picture to that patient, of that individual. So one thing is not necessarily viewed greater than the other. It's taken in its totality in order to state kind of where that individual is from a medical perspective related to their work injury.
And at what stage in the process of the claim are they considered? So
oftentimes, it's our hope that a treating physician is actually the one who manages everything, mm-hmm. and then it gets resolved. So the individual returns back to work. That's the way that it would ideally happen. And typically, we will ask of those treating physicians to give us the information about whether or not the work-related injury has resolved. Is this a permanent situation? Whatever is needed. So basically, if we get a treating physician who's not necessarily a specialist, who's not necessarily getting that expertise to basically move things forward to try and get the resolution to that potential individual's claim, then there may be an additional medical examination that's requested. And that's what they've been called. That's what they are. It's an additional medical claim in the life cycle of their medical care from a specialist, typically in the particular injury that individual had. And then that gets reviewed. It gets sent back to the treating physician. The treating physician analyzes it. They kind of come together and say, this is what needs to happen related to the medical care for that particular injured worker.
Okay.
I would say generally, though, to be specific to your question, it's later in the process, right? The hope is that they've received all of their care and the treating physician has been able to, refer everything and get all the answers and quarterback the care for that individual and solve it. And then ORM is really just making the payments, doing everything that we need to do.
Yeah.
And eventually the claim resolves itself because the individual.
I think as you're laying it out, it sort of is an example of when sort of an expert or another, physician will suggest something and a treating physician will agree. But if someone reaches out to a medical expert who says, no, this person still can't return to work, how do you weigh that?
I mean, ultimately, everything is taken from a logical basis, and it's based on opinions, and it's based on medical facts and medical data provided by experts about what that particular individual needs. And ultimately, if there is a determination that, there are plenty of times when the additional medical examination says this person's actually worse than what the treating physician was saying. And then there are times when they say that actually the issue has been resolved. So, there are times when those experts are saying a thing in one direction and in another direction. What it is it's just truly an additional medical examination, additional medical expertise, talking about what that individual's situation is. And then based on those facts, it's logically taken to say, okay, it's this medical professional is saying it's resolved. Does the treating physician agree? The treating physician can or may say, no, I don't agree. And then the injured worker is able to go and get an additional medical expert. And then they can say, yes, it has been resolved, or no, it hasn't. And kind of all of that work gets done as a part of the management of the claim. And then ultimately a formal decision by the program gets made based on all of the medical expertise that's being provided and laid out. And then ultimately, in the event that there's a disagreement still, then there is the appeals process that can be pursued by the injured worker, their counsel, themselves, and then they have the medical evidence to support their position, and it can be formally ruled upon by the adjudicating bodies.
What's the adjudicating body for appeals?
OAH generally for medical opinions is the adjudicating body, the first level review.
And the sort of ultimate determination within the agency is made by whom?
So the program makes the determinations. The program manager, administrator Jennifer Arnick, and her team are making those determinations. There are certain categories of things that get appealed and can come to my office in order to, and we discussed this during the last hearing, there are certain matters that come to me related to, did we appropriately calculate somebody's pay, just administrative matters associated with that, where we can quickly can respond and solve the issue. And then that can also be appealed in the event that there's a disagreement about it. But generally, OAH is adjudicating changes in medical conditions, right? Whether somebody's been healed, whether they haven't, whether they need continuity of a different medical condition related to their work injury. It's kind of the distinction in the way that it gets laid out. But generally, it's the program that makes the decision, and then appeals go to OAH, and OAH will do it associated with medical conditions. If it's about, did we calculate somebody's pay properly or not, that will be done. Did the program miscalculate something? And those appeals actually come up through my office, and then I actually will remand that and tell them to fix it. Like I said, 30 to 40% of the time, within months. So it's done much faster and people are getting answers, but not related to medical conditions. I don't obviously get involved at all on that.
And I mean, OAH has their own sort of lag on adjudication. So what happens if someone, whomever the claimant is assigned to says they're trying to return to work, and then they have they get a second opinion on their own, says no, they're not fine to return to work, and they want to, and you all sort of make a final determination, no more benefits, you got to return to work. And OAH has a 4-month turnaround. What happens in that time period?
So, we base all of the information on our medical opinion. We give notice, we talk about the appeals process, and we, if the medical evidence says that somebody's able to return to work back to with no restrictions and do their full functions, ultimately we have to rely on that medical evidence. Sometimes it's even their treating physician, right? Will say this person is fine, everything is good. They got the medical care they needed. But sometimes individuals may not agree with that, even though all of the medical experts are saying this individual can work. The individual may say, no, I can't. But ultimately we have to follow the process, we'll issue our notice of determination about those particular facts, supported with evidence, and then we will, they then can get appeals to OAH. In the event that OAH doesn't have much time on its calendar, they'll divert the matter to mediation, and then that can happen actually very quickly, and does happen very quickly out of the gate. And then we will come to mediate, we'll try and resolve the matter. If we are unable to, those benefits will terminate, and the individual will be out of they'll be out of receiving our benefits, but based on all the medical evidence, they could be returning to their job.
To go to mediation, do they have to sort of sign away appeal rights, or does that remain an option?
I don't believe that they're obligated to do that at all. No, I mean, my belief is we mediate, and then if we come to a resolution, it's resolved and there's no appeal issues. If we don't come to a resolution, they can continue with all of their legal processes, including appeals.
Another common complaint that my office at the committee receives about the public workers compensation program is what has been described as a lack of empathy and accommodation. What type of customer service training does the staff that handle the public workers compensation program receive?
So yeah, I mean, we have historically had a customer service liaison. We've actually had trainings about it. We discuss it regularly. I'll say that there are multiple sides to every story. I will also say that my staff and my team members, my colleagues here at ORM, it is a very difficult job to adjudicate these matters, to get yelled at, to have people call you and say very unkind things from time to time, and making determinations about people's insurance benefits, which is really what we're dealing with. So what I constantly preach is for everyone to kind of operate out of the golden rule and to treat others as you'd want to be treated. I also ask for our employees to use empathy and understand that it's not personal or individual when somebody is fiercely advocating for their benefits. And so, just—
I'm sorry, but specific to the question of like, what is there training on it? Because you're right, it's a hard job. There are two sides to every story. So I'm not making an accusation here, but it is a hard job. And so what I'm wondering is there training regarding sort of customer service, empathy, these types of things?
Without a doubt, yes. So our HR professional, Melbert Carlos, he's followed up to do customer service training. It is a constant thing that we talk about, and in order to make sure that we're providing that.
Would you be open, would ORM be open to creating a working group or holding a listening session for claimants and advocates so that you can just make sure that you're aware of what people are going through? Because again, we get a decent number of these concerns. I do recognize there are two sides to every story, so I'm not suggesting that everybody is right. But I think it's always helpful to hear from people on the other end.
I'm always happy to hear from constituents and other interested parties. Definitely, it's something that I'm more than open to. I'll also say, council member and chair, we receive compliments about our staff, and I will say, out of, if we're getting 800 people calling to file claims a year, and 15 or 20 people who are in active litigation are the ones who are reaching out to the committee about these challenges. I would say that we are doing lots of training, lots of support, lots of guidance, and kind of meeting our goals. That we, unfortunately, when you are denying somebody benefits, insurance benefits, they may not always be happy, but I would love to hear from them. I would love to always improve our operations. If there's anything that our staff are doing incorrectly, if there are any ways where we're not providing the best customer service, there are things that we would welcome any input in order to correct or improve our operations. That is my job. That is what we do. And anything that is actually can be accomplished, meets our legislative mandates, we're more than happy to try and push forward on that. So I welcome anyone to email me to reach out and say, I'd love to discuss how this process is undertaken for me individually or for my clients. And I would love I think there should be process improvements here. I would welcome those inquiries, and I will definitely be open to listening to anybody who reaches out to me in my office.
The largest shift in funding in your budget would go to tort liability, the tort liability program, in the amount of $55,734. All of that money is for additional salary and benefits. Why is that?
I think generally that's related to through cost of living adjustments. So there's no, I think it's a matter of, for the staff that were in that division, all of those increases for all those staff are probably being housed in a different comp source group. So it's just a matter of kind of right sizing where it is. So it comes out of the right buckets in the right place, but there's no other operational shifts, no other transfers of money to other places for other things. It's more a matter of kind of right sizing the cost of living adjustments that have been happening district wide.
Okay. And when there are reports of unsafe or unhealthy work site conditions, when those kinds of complaints are filed, how does ORM collect data?
So our risk prevention and safety team will get those notifications, and then they will send out an occupational safety health professional from our team who'll go and evaluate it. We'll interview people, we'll talk to people, and we'll kind of write up what should be done. And then we help to coordinate the back end effort about getting something fixed or resolved or whatever it might be in the event that there's an unsafe work condition. So we were very diligent. We do it within 48 hours, if not, oftentimes we'll do it same day.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as we know about something, we get right out on it. And it just depends on the different ways that we become aware. People are obviously able to go through our e-risk system and file an incident and notify us in that way. And then we'll review it and we'll respond, or I'll get an email, or we'll get phone calls. So any which way that we can get the information, somebody can call that 442 help number, and then we'll go out and we'll evaluate a safety and health circumstance involving the district.
What's the determination time usually?
It just depends on the particular issue. If it's a very complex issue involving lots of people and lots of interviews and lots of communication, that could take 2 weeks. But ultimately, we're able to respond right away. If it's something emergent and needs to be resolved, we're going to be talking to our partners at DGS or within the IS cluster, the agency that's engaged, making sure that our agency risk management representatives at those agencies are involved, and we're addressing it right away. So we generally are on top of it, like I said, within 48 hours right away, and then we're doing the remediation on the immediate actions right away. And then if there is a more extended review process and guidance and proffering of what should be done, that can take weeks, depending on how complex the situation is.
Your testimony mentioned that you're seeing increased costs from hardening insurance markets, particularly for real property insurance. Can you explain that a bit?
Yes, and Councilmember McDuffie's committee reached out to us as well on that topic because of the increases in our insurance costs.
Mhm.
These are, the entire insurance marketplace, as you know, with the increases in inflation and global supply constraints, and then big catastrophic losses that have been happening with hurricanes and other, fires, whatever it is, to affect property. Nationally and internationally, all of the insurance carriers in the marketplace are kind of tightening their belts and looking for more premiums on insurance rates in order to make up for losses and to address increased costs, increases in losses, and increased risk nationally and internationally. And so as a result, all of those things kind of come together to talk about what's happening in the insurance marketplace. When I first started with the Office of Risk Management, it was like a record 14 quarters of pretty much stable, stagnant insurance rates, which is just kind of unheard of. And ever since then, there has been a steady increase year over year in the insurance marketplace from every insurance carrier. And so when you go out to bid to try and market your insurance program for real property or even cyber insurance or really any different type of insurance policy, all of the insurance carriers are saying, well, last year the price was this and now it's this, and the costs are just going up everywhere. So it's just a direct reflection of the hardening of the market. That reflects on why the insurance rates are where they are. We actually overall, a big shout out and kudos to Jane Waters, our insurance team, our insurance partners, RCMD, about how they've been so effective at managing our rates and how we've been paying under the market compared to a lot of our other jurisdictions and partners out there. But even still, those rates are increasing. And so we've been very fortunate at where we were, and now we're kind of seeing the realization of those increases. I will also say we did have 2 losses on 2 of our properties. That also reflects on things when we file claims.
Yeah.
So there are many factors that go into it, but
when you say 2 losses, what do you mean?
The Benning Road trash transfer station had a fire, and Peabody School had a ceiling collapse with some water damage. So, we file claims, we adjudicate. Our partners at the carrier Zurich have been great. So, we're doing everything we need to, but we're in a position where those rates are going to increase. I don't necessarily, with what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on globally, I don't necessarily see rates going down. And as a result, that's why our proposed budget is where it is. It is not to fund new positions, new programs, strategic initiatives. It is to pay for our insurance. And every dollar that is there is needed for that purpose.
Let me move to one other issue. How do you determine the amount you budget for the settlements and judgment fund every year?
Sure. It's something we work very closely in partnership with the CFO on. It is a very difficult thing to be accurate on. You don't know, we don't know if some large lawsuit is going to happen or some large loss will happen. There is no way to predict. Obviously, accidents happen, negligence and damage happens. There is no exact way to know. And so our CFO partners kind of do the analysis with our ORA folks. They look at what we've done for prior years, and they're the ones who help with the mayor's budget team to determine what it is. But I will say, just because it's budgeted, all district dollars are available for settling judgments and funds in the district. So it is a budgeting mechanism, but if we have more losses or more judgments that well exceed that, all district dollars are available to settle those matters. And if there are less, then that money will kind of go back to the general fund. So it's really just a budgeting mechanism that is put in place and kind of spearheaded by the CFO's office to ensure that we're we're doing what we need to do, and that there's money kind of on a regular basis. You're not fighting every single time. You're not trying to allocate budget every
Okay.
settlement. It's really just a budget mechanism.
Okay. Well, Director, I appreciate it. Those are all the questions I have. Want to thank you and your team for the work that you're doing, and we do look forward to working with you throughout this budget process.
Thank you so much, Chair. Appreciate you and your committee. As I said, our lines of communication are open, and your team has been excellent, and we've worked very hard to be as responsive right away whenever they have their inquiries.
I appreciate the responsiveness, and thanks to your entire team.
Of course, thank you.
As we transition to our final government witness, we're going to take a 5-minute recess. So the time is now 2:23. We'll resume around 2:28 with Chief Judge Curry. We are in recess. We are resumed, and I want to welcome Chief Judge Curry, who will join us momentarily.
Good afternoon, Chairman White.
Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
Doing well, thank you. How are you today?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well. So it is, will you both be testifying and or answering questions?
Yes, we will.
Wonderful. I will ask that you both raise your right hand. You swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do so swear.
I do so swear.
Thank you very much. You can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman White. Good afternoon, Chairman White, committee members, and staff. Thank you for allowing me to address you today about the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget for the Office of Administrative Hearings. I'm joined this afternoon by our budget officer, Kathy Burton, who is available to help answer any technical questions you or the committee members may have. OAH's fiscal year 23 proposed gross budget is approximately $11.5 million and supports 103 full-time equivalent or FTE positions. This budget amount comprises entirely local funds and $300,000 in Medicaid grant funds. The largest single expenditure of our gross budget, that's 90%, is approximately $10,275,000 for personal services funding. The remainder, approximately $1,209,000, is for non-personnel services or NPS funding. Overall, OAH's budget reflects an 18.4% reduction in our overall budget from last year. This is exclusively due to the district-wide elimination of the previously used inter-district process, which required OAH to account for negotiated service agreements with other district agencies in a quasi-buyer agency, seller agency arrangement. OAH's fiscal year 2023 budget reflects the district's new interagency process, which will enable OAH as the agency providing the services or the seller agency to finance the services of our interagency projects, and those specifically are the adjudication of unemployment insurance, wage hour, and paid family leave appeals performed for the Department of Employment Services, by directly charging interagency projects funded by the agency receiving the services or the buyer agency. The impact on OAH is a reduction in our proposed fiscal year 2023 budget of approximately $3,141,000 and 20 FTEs, all of which appeared in our intra-district budget in fiscal year 22. Although the funding for the 20 interagency FTEs in the fiscal year 2023 budget and beyond will reside with the buyer agency, the FTEs remain employed by OAH. Otherwise, our fiscal 2023 budget reflects a very modest increase from last year, including an additional $150,000 in Medicaid funding. This is to align more closely with the actual work performed adjudicating Medicaid-related appeals. We also had a restoration of $17,500 in travel funds. Currently, our Schedule A shows 15 vacancies. We are actively recruiting for 12 of those positions. One of those positions, which is a locally funded ALJ, we expect to fill by mid-April. Another position, a deputy clerk position funded through the paid family leave program, we expect to fill actually next week. The 3 remaining vacancies reflect FTEs attributable to the paid family leave program. And as we've previously discussed, recruitment for those 3 PFL funded ALJ positions is on hold pending sufficient caseload to justify hiring. In closing, let me add that OAH is generally satisfied with its proposed budget for fiscal year 23 and believes that with it, we will be able to achieve our programmatic and operational goals. We wish to thank Mayor Bowser and you, Chairman White, for your collective guidance and continued support as OAH transitions back into the office. We look forward to using the lessons we have learned in the last 24 months to more effectively and efficiently provide stellar service to the residents of the district. Thank you for your time today, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. In this year's budget, we funded a new FTE to support your resource center. Have you hired the new staff person for the center yet?
Yes, we have filled that position, and that program analyst is doing absolutely fantastic job. We have tasked him with working on improving our call tree, and he is helping work on our website to improve it. We are undergoing a new rebuilding of our website. He's been actively participating in that. He's also starting to field incoming calls to the resource center to help direct people to get the information that they need.
Okay. And we heard testimony today asking for more staff for the resource center. And do you have a response to that request?
Well, I can say that right now our resource center coordinator is an attorney advisor in the general counsel's office at OIG. Ryan McAnally is doing a fantastic job. He has plans to work with our local law schools to staff the resource center through a fellowship or an internship program with law students, second or third years, I believe, to help answer the phones and guide people, giving them the information they need. In addition to that, we have a judicial clerkship program, a fellowship program, and the judicial clerks are being tasked with also fielding those calls. So we are filling those gaps right now.
Okay, and you think that those resources will be effective enough as opposed to more FTEs specifically for the resource center?
I think that it's something that I would like to see that program, both of those parts of the program come off the ground and get running and evaluate that in a year to see where we are. And if necessary, if we think that we do need to staff it with full-time employees doing the same work, we certainly will ask for that.
Okay. Last year, through negotiation with the chairman's office and the labor committee, we attempted to give you flexibility to use paid family leave funds to hire new staff. Unfortunately, that didn't work out because you couldn't hire staff with only 1 year of funding. There's a proposed subtitle in the Budget Support Act to fix that issue by extending the authorized use of the funding beyond FY22. Are you satisfied with the proposed language?
If that proposed language extends the ability to use those funds beyond fiscal year 22 without a limit, that would allow us to fill those 3 ALJ positions that are funded through PFL funds, and allow us to fill those positions, which would bump up our number of ALJs 3 more. And we could spread out the work, obviously giving priority to the paid family leave cases that come in.
Right. Okay. All right. That's good news. How many new judges and staff do you expect to be able to hire if the proposed Budget Support Act subtitle passes?
I believe we have 3 ALJs that we could fill. We are actively recruiting for the other positions that aren't filled yet. So I believe we have a paid family leave program analyst position, the deputy clerk position is the one that's being filled on Monday. And then what's the other one? The program analyst and a legal administrative specialist. And those 2 we are actually actively recruiting for, because those are positions that we need to support the ALJs who are doing the work now.
Okay. And how many paid family leave cases have you all received so far this fiscal year?
I don't have the number off the top of my head, but I believe this year, the calendar year, I think we've seen 8, but I'd need to go back and look to be sure.
Okay. And we received testimony concerned about whether the proposed budget would allow you to make progress on having a fully searchable public portal for final orders. What's your timeline for that, and where can we find that reflected in the budget?
That our timeline for that, frankly, is as soon as possible. I think we discussed this at Oversight last month, and at that point in time, we hadn't filled both of our IT positions. We now have both of our 2 IT positions filled. And I have had ongoing discussions with them about how we can get this done and as quickly as possible. So we are going back and looking at the work was done prior to this, prior to them coming on board. And Chairman, I would be happy to talk with them and get you a plan for what sort of timing we're looking at, if that's what you would like.
Do you suspect that you'll be able to accomplish this with the existing budget?
I think so. It depends on what the cost is going to be. We're currently looking at what OCTO has done for a few other agencies, instead of hiring an outside vendor to do it. That it looks like it'll be the most specific way to do it. And I just to follow up, we have 9 PFL cases that were filed this calendar year. 17 were filed this fiscal year.
Thank you. So OCTO has created databases similar to the one that we're looking to create here.
For there is a case search function for PERB. There's also one, I believe, for OEA. There are a couple others out there that we're looking at to see if we can utilize the same sort of structure.
Okay. When can you give the committee a timeline? Because I want to make sure we don't kind of come back to hearings and people are asking us about this and we don't have a timeline. So
can you give me a couple of months to make sure that I have solid information?
Yes. So can we say the end of May?
If I don't have a specific timeline by then, I will have a plan in place to know when we can get that for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And how many IT staff members are funded in this budget for OIG?
2.
Okay. In your responses to the committee earlier this month, you indicated that you should have at least 1 more IT specialist. So how are you going to manage with only 2?
We'll do our best. I can't say much more than that. We have started negotiations and discussions with the executive to try and seek to get an additional position. It doesn't show up in the fiscal year 23 budget, but we will still continue to request that.
Obviously, you heard concern from a few folks who testified about the IT. Is it your understanding that the previous people in the IT positions were burning out and stretched too thin?
I think, given the circumstances that we found ourselves in during the pandemic, there was a lot more work that was needed to be done, and a lot of it needed to be done remotely, which is a little bit more difficult than being in person. We're migrating back into the office, and I think that will release at least some of the stress on a lot of our staff, including the IT.
Okay. Do you still plan to make permanent remote and hybrid hearings?
Yes.
Okay. And that will, of course, be some added strain for the IT folks. You testified that your proposed budget includes a restoration of $17,500 in travel funds. What's the purpose of the proposed travel?
Statutorily, we're required to provide education and continuing legal education for our ALJs in particular. A lot of that opportunity is actually in person. During the pandemic, it was all remote, but a lot of the trainings are moving back to in person. And we would like to be able to afford ALJs to travel to join those trainings as necessary.
Okay. And there's $150,000 in your budget, an increase of $150,000 to reflect increased federal Medicaid reimbursements. Can you explain that in more detail?
I'm going to ask Kathy to explain that.
Sure. Good afternoon, Councilman Boyd. Chairman White, I'm sorry. The increase of the $150,000 for the federal Medicaid repayment is to align with the previous spending trend from the last 2 years of spending. Okay. So we increased the budget from 150,000 to 300,000.
So, okay. The other significant increase looks to be for contractual services in your judicial program. What's that?
Okay. That was restoration of the mission critical contracts for translation and transcription of
Okay.
316,000.
Okay. And you testified that you have 15 vacancies, 3 of which are tied to paid family leave funding. You mentioned you only expect to fill 1 of those positions by mid-April. Do you expect to fill the rest of those positions this fiscal year?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm remembering regarding the translation services that we were just discussing. One of our witnesses suggested that they have had difficulty getting Amharic translations. So does the increased budget include Amharic translation?
So we have contracts with interpreter services that will provide in-person interpretation or telephone interpretation, depending on the type of hearing. And if that doesn't work, we also have a contract, the district has a contract with Language Line. So a judge can call in and get an interpreter on the phone. So we do actually have interpretation services available for hearings. They're scheduled for the hearings. I believe that was Ms. Christensen who was talking about that. We have contractors for Spanish interpretation who come in to our offices when we were open to the public. They were in our offices and available at the drop of a hat. We don't have that for Amharic, but we do have language interpretation available for hearings when necessary.
Okay, so there shouldn't be an issue getting translation services.
No. Sometimes we have occasionally we do have snafus with scheduling. We try to avoid that at all costs. So.
Okay. You mentioned in your testimony that you're generally satisfied with the proposed budget, but it does largely keep your agency's budget flat when you're facing case backlogs. So what progress can we expect to see on your case flow this year if your staffing remains flat as proposed?
Well, I'm very happy to report that we no longer have a backlog in unemployment insurance cases. We are currently up to date on those. And the other 2 agencies that we have backlogs in, we have reallocated during the pandemic, we had moved staff to unemployment insurance to try and handle that huge increase in cases. We're reallocating staff back to the other 2 agencies, and we're also improving our processes so that we can get things more efficient. Even with a flat budget, I am confident that we're going to eat away at those backlogs in a steady manner.
Okay, I will hold out hope.
Thank you.
So, I mean, are there fewer cases coming in, or how do logically, how do we expect to cut away at the backlogs? What's going to be different going forward than?
Well, a lot of the backlog in our the cases have to do with these are notice of violation, notice infraction cases, which are filed by agencies with our agency. And if somebody wants a hearing, they file a request for hearing on that. If they don't respond to the notice of violation or notice infraction in a specific amount of time, those cases go into what we call default status. And if The notice was done properly. It's legally sufficient on its face. We can default that case. The vast majority of the cases in our backlog are those cases that are ripe for default. And we have a backlog because of the large increase that we saw, and because our processes for handling those default cases was relatively inefficient. And so we've tasked several of our different divisions in our agency to look at creating more efficient processes for working through those. We're implementing those and adding more staff from basically the staff that we don't need for the UI backlog anymore. We're tasking those. We've also obtained some reprogramming for contract work, and those were our contractors that we can hire to come in and do the data entry, the simple data entry that is required to manage those cases. With that influx of contract work, we'll be able to, I think, handle those more efficiently.
Okay. In fiscal year 21, you opened 15,400 cases and closed 18,226 cases. Did you have a prediction or estimation about whether you'll have more cases than you did in FY23?
I believe in FY23 we will see more cases filed. Yes.
Okay.
We've gotten information from several different agencies that they expect that the case filings in the coming fiscal years will be back to pre-pandemic levels.
Gotcha. Okay. And on average, you were assigning each judge 371 cases in fiscal year 21, which was significantly down from over 600 cases per judge prior to the pandemic. Do you have a target for how many cases per judge in any given year makes sense?
We don't have a target. One of the things that we're investigating is what is a reasonable number on average for the judges. 333 sounds like it looks like that's a reasonable amount for the judges, but we'll have to look to see where the pandemic brings us after that.
Okay. How is that a reasonable amount for somebody who doesn't work inside the agency? That seems insurmountable, and that's still way under 600.
That's so not all of the cases actually require hearing. And so there are a lot of a number of the cases are adjudicated without hearing. Either they're resolved by settlement, or they're a default, as I spoke about, or somebody submits what we call an admit with explanation, which is a paper pleading. And those require less time than having a hearing. And the number of cases that we have from DPW, the Department of Public Works, those hearings generally take less time. So each type of case has a different character, and we have very complicated cases. The workers' compensation cases are very complicated, sometimes have 700 or 800 pages of medical testimony that and documentation that an ALJ has to go through. And an ALJ could spend anywhere from 40 to 80 hours writing an order on a single case. And that's at one end of complexity. And then you have at the other end of the complexity, a DPW tickets, generally a 15-minute hearing and maybe an that to write an order. So you have that balance.
Okay.
So it's that spreading that level out among all the judges is kind of complicated.
Okay. You suggested previously that a staffing benchmark study might make some sense for the agency. Do you have any idea what something like that might cost?
I do not. Frankly, since we talked about it about a month ago, it's been on my list of things to do, but we've had a few other things to handle. But it is something that I would like to try and figure out.
One question that came up from one of our public witnesses, if there's a complaint about an ALJ, where does that complaint go? Where are complaints against ALJs filed?
When we receive a complaint about an ALJ, the complaint is referred to our Human Resources Department and our General Counsel's office. They collaborate on doing an internal investigation. In some circumstances, depending on the nature of the complaint, if it falls under something that should be handled by the Office of Human Rights, we refer it to the Office of Human Rights. Most complaints can be handled in-house. We do an investigation. The people who are doing the investigation will, if necessary, listen to a hearing if there was a hearing, review the orders and the statements, speak to the judge, speak to the person who makes the complaint if necessary. They will then make a report to me, and I will decide how to respond. And if there's behavior from an ALJ that surpasses my statutory authority, then it's referred to the cost. I'm very proud to say that, first of all, I'm very proud of all of our ALJs. They take their cases very seriously and strive very hard to be fair and equal for all the parties. I have never seen a referral during my tenure as Chief ALJ. And that's the process.
All right. As you know, the council passed legislation establishing a civil fine structure for enforcing fare evasion on Metro. I know that you have engaged the Metro Transit Police Department in the past to try to get a process set up to allow for civil enforcement. Can you provide a status update on that effort?
I certainly can. I don't have it handy right now. I believe that the last meeting that we had with the Metro Authority was August of last year. And at that point, they told us that they needed to do some work internally. And they said, we'll just contact you when we're ready. And we haven't heard anything back. But that's my memory. Might not be completely right. Let me give you an update on that.
Okay, I would appreciate that. Those are all the questions I have, Chief Judge Curry. I want to thank you. Yes, everyone's surprised at my limited questions this year. The budget timeline has forced us to truncate sort of our questions and our focus. We will have some questions between the hearing and our markup, but I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing, for being in our hearing today, and we do look forward to working with you in the budget process.
Thank you very, very much, Chairman White. It's, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you about OAH. And I have to say, I want to give a big shout out to Sean Hilgensdorf. He's been fabulous. We have communicated with him. And as always, we will respond as soon as we can to any questions that you may have.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much to your team. I join you in your thanks to my team. I am lucky to have them, including our committee director, Sean Hilgendorf. I want to thank our public witnesses, all those who have joined in and watched and sent us testimonies. I do want to note that for anyone who would like to submit testimony, you can submit testimony in writing that will be made part of the official record. You can email it to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities at facilities@dccouncil.us, facilities@dccouncil.us. The record for this hearing will close at the close of business on Friday, April 1st. With that, the business before this committee is concluded. The time is 2:58 p.m. and this budget oversight hearing of the committee is adjourned. Thank you again.